Like cooking, everything has a recipe.
A set of instructions to follow in order to gain a certain result.
Music is no different.
Be it ingredients for a dish, a set list for an amazing show,
Or a release strategy for a successful launch.
these are all recipes.
Hi, we're your hosts, Sean.
And I'm Brandon.
Come and join us in our kitchen as we go through the Music Makers Cookbook.
Let's get cooking.
Hello, and welcome to the Music Makers Cookbook, the podcast where we help independent artists craft recipes for success in the music industry. I'm Sean.
I'm Brandon.
I'd like that intro. I like the new voice.
That was really nice.
It's more soothing, like, hello.
It feels like a little bit more AI to me.
Does it?
A little bit, but it's like in a good way though.
It's a good, okay.
Yeah.
Good robot?
But it was still very soothing though. So
All right.
Yeah,
I try to pitch up a little bit to out the voice.
I like it. I like it, dude.
Try it new. Why not? It's good to have some fresh ingredients to cook with every now and then.
Oh yeah, got to change it up.
Try some new
Same
stuff.
meals get old, dude. They get old, man.
I will probably never do that again. Anyways, thank you for joining in on today's episode. Can you close that door? Good enough. Anyways, thank you for joining us on today's episode. I'm really excited about this one. This is kind of talking more about the mentality behind the music, something we all struggle with, and that is burnout.
I've been so excited to talk about this topic.
Have
I'm
you?
sorry to cut you off, but damn, man, it's been a rough month and a half for me.
I was gonna say, have
personally.
you ever been burnt out?
Every damn day? No. Yes, I have, and actually, most recently, I have been. What about you?
Oh yeah, same. I think shortly after we had our talk, after you were burnt out, like a couple weeks later, I just got crazy overwhelmed, and
Oh, good. I gave it to you.
yeah, me as well.
Good. Yeah, good.
It comes in waves.
Yep. It's contagious, so you better watch out.
But I've handled it much better this time than I have in the past. And
Yeah.
we're going to kind of be talking about things that we've done, things we've seen other people do, and just kind of what burnout is and how to handle it. Do you want to kind of tell a little bit about your story when you were burnt out?
Yeah.
'Cause
So
there's nothing wrong with being burnt out. Everyone goes through it.
Burnout is totally normal, and that's something that you're actually going to face a lot in your life. And how you get out of it and how you manage your burnout and how to hopefully prevent it is what matters the most. But you're going to get burnt out. It's just inevitable. Everybody does. That's why vacations exist, right? So, and hopefully those don't burn you out too, because they can be stressful. So
For our UK listeners, holidays exist.
holidays. I do like that better. Like I'm going on holiday. That sounds really nice.
It does, but like we have holidays. So like
We do.
going on holidays.
Do they call
is different.
holidays there?
I don't know.
We're going to need to interview somebody from the UK. So if you're
Yes.
interested in coming on the podcast and literally just telling us that answer,
Just contact
Let
us
us
at
know.
podcast at
Yeah.
musicmakerscookbook.com.
we will put you in a 1-minute segment, swear to God, and then you can explain it to us. So
We'll make a Instagram short about it, or put it on a TikTok reel.
Yep.
Not real, whatever. Social media. Watch our the past episodes about
Yes.
social media. Anyways, tell us
Yes.
your story about burnout.
So yeah, mine really came from like more personal stuff, but in the beginning of the year, the spot that I work at flooded a little bit. Small flood. Nothing was damaged, nothing like crazy, but it was enough to warrant like a remodel. So I was trying to deal with that and figure out the scheduling of the contractors and when this was actually going to work. It ended up taking about 2 or 3 months to actually start the project with how we were kind of like jerked around by the contractors and the insurance company and stuff. And that was really stressful. And that's actually been like most of the year, right? So like I had that up until about April. I'm working from another place. So I'm a little displaced and I'm a little stressed out because stuff sounds different. The workflow is different. I have more intrusions from home, right? And so I kind of had to figure out how to work there. So that was a little bit more stressful and a little bit more fire that kind of burnt me up a little bit, right? I get back into the studio once it's remodeled and it's awesome. Everything's working as planned, but then I'm overloaded because I have to catch up with in-person stuff, right? And so now that's a little bit stressful. And then now we move on to the end of May.
Well, hold on, because like on top of that, you also had a client who had a really strict deadline.
Yes, still had the strict deadline because people were moving, right? And like you had to get that stuff recorded before people move. And I think there was like 3 people that were moving that I work with, which was crazy. It was all happening like at the same time. And so we had to kind of plan around that, right? And eventually I got to a point where I was like, great, I'm caught up, like everything's sounding great. Like I feel like I'm making my best music and my best decisions at the same time. Everybody's been really happy. And then another personal life thing is my car drops its transmission. Okay. And then, as you know, if you're a car owner, the transmissions are not cheap. So that was really stressful. Just got it back the other day, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. It was a good bill.
Brand's got his wheels again.
Got wheels again. And so that happened. Then a bunch of stuff with the dogs and just really everything in between that I've felt almost nothing but overwhelm and burnout this year. And that's kind of been my experience these past couple months. But at the same time, there are pockets of really good growth in there, I think, and very rewarding experiences in there as well. So it's not all bad. I don't want you to think that I'm like a Debbie Downer, like woe is me, right? There's obviously some great things going on and stuff I'm really excited with. I've tried not to like let it spill over, right? But Sean has helped me a lot, you know, with getting through this. Obviously, family has helped a ton. Friends have helped a lot, and just trying to remain true to what this is all about and remain active in it has been great. And it's just one of those things where you sometimes have to push through, but that's where I've come from with my burnout most recently. And it's been unfortunately a long slog, like months of this kind of all building up, but coming and going. And like I've always said too, just to reiterate that this is not a woe is me moment on this podcast. It's just everything that happened to me had a solution in the end, right? Whether it's monetary or just putting extra time into something or whatever the case may be. It's not like anybody died. So that is like the best way to, I think, to frame it. But that's where I've come from for the past couple of months. What about you, Sean?
For me recently, it was a very similar story in terms of just everything adding up at once. Really shortly after we started the podcast, got a couple episodes recorded, and the launch was getting near. It got time to like, okay, time to edit all this, put it all together, create social media for it, do all that. And I probably spend about, including recording and all this, maybe 6 hours to 8 hours a week with creating the content, by editing the episode, rendering the episode, creating the art for it, for the YouTube, if you're watching us on YouTube, cutting clips from it for social media, putting together posts for it, the time we put into doing all this, recording it. It's a good chunk of time. Around this time, I also do some live music work, and all the concert series were starting off because it was the start of summer. So I was working 3 shows a week at 3 different concerts, series, one on Thursday, one on Friday, one on Saturday. And those usually go from 2 p.m. to 11 p.m. or later. And that's a big chunk of time out of my day that I can't spend on the podcast, and more specifically can't spend on my music. I'm also taking some other courses, try to expand my skill set, also doing mixing and mastering for clients, artist development for clients, trying to schedule meetings, recording. And it was a classic case of biting off more than could be chewed. Sure. And that's another thing that can really lead to burnout, is just piling too much more on the plate. And all of it's stuff I enjoy doing and stuff I want to do. And that can be the frustrating part of everything I'm doing is fun, but it can still lead to burnout, even if you really enjoy it and you love doing it. It can be very overpowering. And that's kind of what happened to me. And I'm still in the process of getting through it. I've been able to drop certain things and organize things better and implement some new tools to organize my time better so I can actually get back caught up and then ahead because it's more structured. I downloaded an AI calendar application app called Motion, where you put in the tasks, the priority, and how long it's going to take you to do it. And it will automatically structure it, ties your Google Calendar in order of importance by the deadline. If it's a hard deadline, a soft deadline, and all that. And you can schedule breaks in between, make sure I have a lunch break, all that stuff. So just kind of taking more time organizing my calendar. And then me and my girlfriend every Sunday, we'll go to a coffee shop and spend an hour planning out our next week. And that's helped me stay on track. I'm still working between 70 to 80 hour work weeks, but it's more under control. And also there's the faith that's going to work out, because faith is a big important thing in it.
It's a huge thing.
A huge thing that it's going to work out. Keep on doing it. And the knowledge that in a couple more months, live season's done. So that's a huge chunk of time going away. Oh, also I was doing installs. We had a couple of church things that we were putting PA up and all that. That took up a lot of time too. So yeah, just biting off a lot more than I can do. That's the burnout that I had. And
And I want to reiterate too that like this isn't us being woe is us, right? Like
You said that before,
like,
man.
I know, but like I just want to present that this is us trying to be vulnerable with people,
Yeah.
and like burnout's a very vulnerable thing, and like you have to be able to do that with
yeah.
yourself and realize that like maybe I am getting burnt out, and like actually coming to grips that you're not Superman. You know, like we have to have this time to breathe at the end of the day, but also there's something interesting that comes out of burnout too, and that is solutions. And like sometimes, so like when you go to the gym and you work out, you push yourself a little more, right, to help gain that extra muscle mass, 5%, 5% at a time, right? And that's kind of where the burnout comes from, is because typically you're sometimes like pushing yourself so hard. Typically, there are some other instances that might not be the same.
Out of your control.
That's totally out of your control. And sometimes you have to just roll with the fucking punches. Sometimes those punches are preventable too, right? So like, for example, some of the instances that I had, some of those could have been prevented sometime in the past. And it's important to kind of go back and outline those. But like the way that you kind of do that is like what Sean said, is by coming up with solutions that help you at the end. So as long as you're turning your burnout into a positive at the end of the day, it's a lot more of I wouldn't say it's rewarding because it sucks, but like it's also more productive at the end, I would say.
So
than it is a hindrance sometimes.
That whole thing and this whole introduction and us talking about how we're going through it really leads into kind of the first thing that can be done to address the overall hold that burnout can have on you. And that is just the mindset. It can be very stressful, overwhelming. It can be very strong emotionally to try to get through it. But as you just heard Brandon and I talk, we had the mindset of we'll get through it. We'll learn from it. We'll try implementing new things. We've been here before. We can get out of it and all that. And you've heard Brandon say it 10,000 times. This isn't a woe is us moment.
Yeah.
And that's because owning up to this, we have the power to kind of control it. This is in our scope of what we can do, taking accountability for the lives that we lead. And that's important to not have something called the victim mindset,
yes,
which is the thought process of, oh, woe is me.
That is the woe is me mentality.
Yeah. The world is against me. Everything is against me. Things are going down. And not to sound presumptuous saying like, just don't think that the world's against you. Like, stop being a victim. But, you know, tough love can be can be important. Like everyone goes through life, not to say situations are better or worse.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, the attitude that you have is controlled by you, and the steps you take are controlled by you. And people have been through similar things before throughout history. What solutions do they have to come through? And that's kind of what this is about too. We've had similar situations of being overwhelmed and burned out from being in music, from being artists, being recording engineers, just being in music. So we're trying to help get past that. What's the mindset to get past that? And the whole victim mentality is a huge thing that holds artists back. And I hear it from clients semi-frequently.
I do too.
Things aren't working out for me.
Yep. Oh, it's the algorithm. Right.
Yeah.
Like that's one of the biggest victim things that I've seen.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the algorithm. This is why I can't gain traction. Or, oh, I couldn't play with these guys today because this guy had to do something else. Like, oh, well, now I can't play a show. Or, you know, I mean, fill in the blank. The victim mentality is extremely toxic and will spill over into your personal life, or will spill over from your personal life. It is a very bad thing to have. And like burnout can lead to you feeling like you're a victim, but you always have to maintain that perspective. And like Sean said, maybe it's through tough love, maybe from a mentor or a family member or someone that you trust. Sometimes you need that kick in the pants,
kick in the ass.
Yeah. So
gotta get your ass kicked to get out of it.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
So yeah, that's something that I see, and kind of moving on from that, other than victim mentality of it, is it's easy to feel overwhelmed by things or uninspired by things when you rely too much on motivation and the feeling of excitement to do things. Like, it's a hard way to phrase it, but like you'll hear people say that two camps. Only work when you're motivated, because that's where your best work comes from. And people also say work through your lack of motivation, because if you train the muscle of being creative when you're not motivated, you build a stronger muscle. You'll hear both camps, and it works for different people. Some people need to work through so they can keep making a consistent product, and kind of to a degree, that's part of being a professional, is being able to be consistent. And some people need to just kind of work through not being motivated. Some people can only work when they're motivated. But you still need to be consistent. You still have to have something coming out there. So something that I whenever I feel burnt out, one of the first things I do is I think, okay, well, what am I burnt out with? Am I burnt out with music? Am I burnt out with mixing? Am I burnt out with what am I burnt out with? Why did I do it in the first place? Why did I fall in love with it? Why am I doing it now? And if I don't have an answer to it, I drop it. Because that's one of the first things you need to do is stop doing things that don't inspire you, that don't serve you. Audit yourself. Make sure you know, hey, what are the tasks that cause me stress right now? What is making my life hard? What is causing this burnout? Remove everything you can. If it doesn't serve you, remove it. And then reduce things that you can. If you have to do it still, but it causes so much stress, reduce it as much as you can. Maybe you don't have to put 10 hours into it. Maybe you can get by putting 2 hours in it. Still get a minimally viable product out. And a minimally viable product is basically, kind of exactly what it lay out. What is the minimum effort you can put in to still get something good out of it? A lot of times, especially when you do something for a while, at the very start, you get 80% of the way there. And then the rest of it, you're getting very small incremental gains. It's refinement. At what point does the refinement stop making it better and just makes it different? And this can be in terms of your social media creation process. It can be in terms of practice with your band, your shows. Like maybe you're doing things that you don't necessarily have to do. And if they're causing you stress, how can you reduce them? How can you minimize them, but still have the product that you need, the end result that you need to put out there? And then the rest of it, if it causes you stress, but you need to do it and it needs to hit a certain amount and this amount of work needs to get put into it in order to finish it, how can you offload that elsewhere? For example, if you're in a band and social media creation really stresses you out, but your drummer really enjoys the process of it. He's a photographer on the side. He likes taking, thinking about different pictures for the band, promo stuff. And he enjoys converting with fans where you're stressed out with, man, I got to log on for 30 minutes and respond to all these messages. But they really enjoy it. Well, boom, easily. Here, you can take this from me. Now, this 30 minutes you're doing responding to fans and this hour you're spending crafting your social media presence that's really stressing you out is handled by someone who is also invested in what you're doing, who still knows what you guys stand for as a group, and you can offload that. Now, for sometimes you don't necessarily have something you can just offload it to right that easily, and you might have to pay a freelancer to do it. Well, there's great services out there like Fiverr, Upwork, things like that. For example, at some point, I mentioned my burnout and how much time it takes for me making this podcast. At some point, I'm going to offload editing this podcast. I'm editing it all myself. But at a certain point, I'll be hiring an editor to edit these episodes for me, because that's a huge amount of time that is causing me to not be able to do other things I want, which makes me have to work later in order to get everything done. And that's how I can offload. So that's kind of the first thing that I do, is find out audit yourself, find out what is wrong, how can I fix it? And then from there, now that I have reduced things, I have more time. Why am I doing this in the first place? Why do I love this? How did this start? And make time to do it again. If you got into mixing and mastering because you love working with bands, but it's talking to myself, but you've only been spending all your time lately hanging up PA, well, I got to work with more bands. Or I'm not recording, I'm just mixing remotely. And I'm starting to get burnt out from it. Well, I should probably spend more time working with bands, being in the room with other artists, because that's what invigorates me and makes me feel creative. If you're an artist and you got into making art and writing music because the impact that you see on the fans that listen to your music and the people that enjoy what you're doing, that's what keeps you going. And all you've been doing lately is recording and practicing and doing that loop between just your small group of artists. Schedule a show, get out there, get that feedback again. Maybe do a live stream, do an acoustic live stream where it's just you going through your songwriting process or whatnot. Get that engagement that got you into it in the first place. When you get too into the weeds, it can be hard to step back and think, why am I doing this to begin with? What got me into it? Because you get so caught up in the trees, you're not looking at the whole forest. And being able to step back and be like, okay, I need to have this full view and reconnect with why I'm doing this to begin with. That can be setting time to do the things that motivate you to do the things that you know you want to do that align with your goals is incredibly important to do. Thank you for listening to my rant.
No, dude, that was great.
That's the start of kind of going through this, at least for me personally.
Which camp are you in, number 1 or number 2?
Number 1 or number 2?
Yeah. When you said there was 2 camps, are you of the camp that you work through the motivation and are more consistent, or do you rely on motivation?
I more so rely on motivation, but I have implemented a lot of systems to inspire my motivation, if that makes sense. Like I do my best work when I'm motivated. It's hard for me to work through motivation when it's a project I'm not into and I just need to get it done. It's not good for me, not good for the artist, not good for anybody involved. And that's one of the reasons why when I mix and I master, I use hardware. I don't need to use hardware. None of my hardware is better, quote unquote, than the plugins that I could use in the box. But something about that whole process, moving the patch around, being creative, figuring this goes here, how do I patch this, that process brings me joy. And the process of thinking about how can I incorporate the things that I have to get a certain effect that I want to make the song sound better, but the hands-on nature of it inspires me to put more effort into the mix overall.
Right.
So that's why I mix and master hybrid. Plus, I like the analog sound. It makes it a little messier. It's noise. It's analog, and to me, that's part of what makes music fun. So that's kind of my. I'm number 2, I guess.
Yeah. Gotcha.
What are you? Are you number 1 or number 2?
I'm definitely number 1. I will work through not having motivation.
Work through the pain.
I will work through it. And I think it's because I'm of that mindset that it is a muscle. And like, I realize that I'm not going to be motivated every single time I get into the studio with somebody. And I need to make sure that I am motivated when I get into the studio with somebody. And that doesn't come from the lack of wanting to work with that person. It just comes from me being a human being most of the time. Sometimes I'm AI, but yeah.
Like the intro of this podcast.
Like the intro. Like Sean was a little bit AI during the intro, and now we're human. That's really cool. It's just one of those things where I'm like, I need to be able to turn this on and turn this off when I need to, and be inspired by things that are very niche and very minute, you know, find the little joys in things and then just keep pushing through it. You know, that's kind of like where I come from. And that's what's worked for me so far. So I just wanted to see what kind of camp you were in, see where you were coming from.
No, that's fair. I paused for a little bit because I kind of completely forgot that's how I started this whole thing.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, there was something else that you said in there too that's really important that we do have on our outline that we want to talk about, is that you mentioned in there the idea of refinement and the minimal viable product, which is MVP for short, actually comes from, I believe, the book Lean Startup. I believe.
I think you're right.
It's one of the first steps that you take in your journey of creating a product and going through the build, learn, measure loop, or build, measure, learn loop. It's one of the two. I forget the vernacular, but that's one of the first steps that you do, right? And so 80% of it is creating, like Sean said, 20% of it is refinement. And then after a certain point, you just start changing it. That point where you start changing it and you're not really doing anything is called a diminishing marginal return. So the amount of time that you put into something does not always necessarily dictate how much of a return you'll get back from that. And that is really important to understand, because you can research something until you're blue in the face. You can do something until you literally leave this earth, and there might be no gain in it for you. it just changes it just like changes maybe how you think about it. And like that's a gain. I don't even know how I would even explain this. I mean, it doesn't really serve you a purpose. You're not learning anything from it differently. You're just kind of being there, right?
Yeah.
And that sense of stagnation at the end of the extra 0.01% you're getting from doing this activity over and over again can lead to burnout real fast.
Oh yeah.
Because you feel nothing but stagnation. That's all you feel. And you might not be getting any better. That's the worst part. So there is a point in time where there is a break-even point. And then once you go past that break-even point, now it's just starting to become a very redundant thing where you're not really refining anything. You're just kind of just doing it.
Yeah. It's not better. It's just different.
Yeah, exactly. So that is something that to be very mindful of if you're spending 10 hours a day on social media. Are you seeing 10 hours of results from that? Probably not, I would guess. But if you spent 2 hours and you were a little bit more efficient at it, would you see better results? If not, maybe even better results than you would spending 10 hours on something? Maybe.
Well, even if it's the same result as 10 hours,
and you save 8 hours,
still a win because you've got 8 hours, and that's less of a weight that can be, overbearing and just, I got to spend 10 hours a day because I've been spending 10 hours a day. Well, do you really? Can you reduce it down to 2 and still contact everybody you need to and get the ideas you need to?
Exactly. And then that leads us to taking that 8 hours that you gained from actually doing this maybe more efficiently or finding more or a better inspiration behind something or whatever the case may be. You take that 8 hours and put it into something else because as we talked about before, opportunity cost is a real thing. Do you want to explain it real quick? You have a better explanation of it than I do.
Of opportunity cost?
Yeah, I know we've talked about it before, but just really quick, just in case for people that have just tuned in.
Yeah, opportunity cost is the cost of doing anything.
Yes.
The time you spend doing one task is also time you could have spent doing something else.
Yes.
So the opportunity cost of it is the thing that you could have been doing instead. Driving an hour to work and back, the opportunity cost of that is 2 hours a day where you could be doing other tasks if you were able to live closer to your work and put it down to 15-minute commute. Now you get an hour and 45 minutes back where you could be writing music, could be practicing with your band, things like that.
Spending time with your family.
Spending time with your family, playing with your dogs or your cat or your goldfish. I don't know how you would do that, but maybe you do.
If you can, please let us know.
Yeah, do you have like a hoop that it jumps through? Anyways,
that'd be cool.
But that's what it is.
Yeah, and taking that opportunity cost that you saved from the diminishing marginal returns of this activity. Let's stick with social media, right? So let's say you do it in 2 hours. Now you have an extra 8 hours you can allocate elsewhere where you will see a return if you put 2 hours into it. More of a return than you would spending eight extra hours on social media, right? So these two things work in tandem together very well. And one thing does not necessarily dictate the other. Like you are the judge of that and what you need to work on. So that's why it's always important to maintain a fresh perspective. But either of these things can actually equate to burnout if they're not used properly. So I just wanted to make sure that those two things were on the docket for today.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is a very personal and huge topic. We're just going to really talk about our own experiences. That's what we've been doing instead of really trying to dive deep into everything about it. But as a whole, a lot of things that can cause burnout to occur are things that are stressors.
Yeah. Yep.
So like not taking care of your mind and your body, creating a bad environment for yourself to exist in is a one-way ticket to burnout because everything is connected. If what you're doing doesn't align with your goals, isn't fulfilling to you. In fact, I think recently there was a study like the most reason people quit jobs is because they don't feel fulfilled or they feel like they are building towards something is hugely important to people to feel like there's some growth there. Not taking care of your mind and your body and doing things that don't lead to a feeling of growth and learning and building is, as I said, a one-way ticket to burnout. Things like doom scrolling on social media. I've done it.
I've done it.
You've done it. I know you've done it too, listening, because that's what they're built to do. They're built to be addictive. Doom scrolling, if you do put stuff out there, focusing on bad reviews, bad comments, negativity of people going against or talking negatively on things you do, especially with music, it's a huge part of who we are. If that's the kind of music that you make is a reflection on things that matter to you, it can feel so shitty to have someone just go and be so negative about it. I brought up the victim mindset earlier, thinking like the world is against you. It can be really tough to unlearn that. That's a whole personal journey, a whole can of worms that we really can't dive into today's episode. But if you think that this is you, you need to take steps.
Seriously, quick.
Just say quickly, go fast. Being inside, not being active, not getting access to the sun, no exercise. The body and the brain are connected, and studies out there showcasing that when you move, just take like a 10-minute walk, it will greatly impact your mood. When I have burnout, I make it a point to get outside. Every day I go for at least a 30-minute walk. There's a trail right by my studio, so I can go for a 30-minute walk. And even when I'm overwhelmed and I got so much stuff to do, that is one thing that I will not stop doing because I need to have that motion, feel like I'm doing something. And to me, the way my brain works on it and why I love running and exercising and walking as a way to get through burnout and get past stress is because it's literally going forward. Whenever you walk, you are moving from where you are to someplace new. You are changing your environment. Things are passing by and you are progressing forward. Literally, the body's progressing forward. And to me, that kind of ties into the mind of, I can think about things more in the future. I can do planning. I can figure out how I'm going to solve these problems. I can organize my schedule while I'm walking because I'm already in the mindset of moving forward, which allows me to be more refreshed, more motivated, more energized when I get back to dive into the work that I need to do and not feel too overwhelmed and stressed by it because I put time aside to physically move, get the heart going, get the endorphins running, all that. I don't know if that's the right terminology, but whatever. It aids to moving forward. And lastly, like diet. I mean, we're in America. We eat shitty food.
I eat shitty food every day.
All the time.
Yep.
Do you feel good after you eat shitty food?
It depends on what kind of day I'm having.
There's this might be a really weird quote to a person to quote in a music podcast, but I'm going to quote Chris Pratt.
Okay.
Real quick.
Okay.
If you know Chris Pratt, have you seen him during Parks and Rec? He was a heavier guy.
Yep.
It was more like physical body humor was his thing. And then he got cast in Guardians of the Galaxy and shredded. Went through a huge thing about it. And he talked about the whole process of physical exercise, but more importantly, how he had to change his diet.
Yeah, I think I know this quote. Yeah.
And the quote was, I used to feel great when I ate and shitty every time else.
Yep. Now
I feel not necessarily shitty, but I don't feel great when I eat, but I feel great every time else.
Yeah.
We all know the basic saying, put shit in, get shit out.
Yep.
We're no different.
Yep.
If we don't don't treat ourselves properly, we're not going to get shit out. We're going to get shit out.
Yeah, but it's not good.
Literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
But and it can be hard to say that because especially if you're trying to make your music work and you're just starting off and you're working part-time, so you can put so much time into it, how much money you have to put into food may be very low. And in America, we have this grind culture of just eat ramen every day.
Yep.
20 cents per meal, be super cheap, just go grind, get work done, and live as frugally as possible. And it's hard to say, no, you need to spend more money on your food.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's
but
funny
because it can be a way to get out of burnout.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because speaking on the American culture part of it, it's either you grind, eat ramen, or you go eat out. Go get DoorDash, right? It's one or the other. And it's never like actually buy quality food and cook it yourself, which is what we do on this podcast because we are the Music Makers Cookbook.
Yep.
Yeah, it's so funny how it's presented as either or, but really it should be met in the middle with you buying maybe better food for yourself. I mean, I'm really speaking to myself right now and cooking that in the kitchen. And it's a more holistic well-rounded experience, I would say too. You appreciate it more. And it's another way to be creative too. Just saying.
Yeah. And especially if you find out that you like cooking, it can be a great stress release.
Absolutely.
A way to focus on something that's completely different from all the expectations and stressors that are causing you to feel burnt out.
Mm-hmm.
It can be a great release to get back to where you need to be.
So some more tangible things that I see with artists, and actually just myself as well, of course, is sprinting at the beginning of a new venture. So let's say you're doing something new for the first time and you're all about it. So you have a lot of motivation behind it because it's new and exciting. This is also sometimes sparked by shiny object syndrome. We won't go into that, but basically,
tell us what that is real quick.
Yeah, basically you go from one thing to the next because it's new and exciting, and you never finish that one thing prior, which can build up over time. So you can have a bunch of unfinished projects, but keep going on to the new things. And I'm looking at everybody that starts a new project when you haven't finished the last song you just wrote. And I know I'm looking at you, and you just did that yesterday. So I do it all the time. I'm totally guilty of it myself. But this is like something that I see a lot is like, you're very into what you're doing at the time, and it's new, it's fun, and it's exciting. You're learning all these things, and you're just going. And then at the end, you're like, oh, well, it's not really giving me a dopamine rush anymore. And so I'm either going to drop it, or I'm just so tired of doing this, I'm never, ever going to touch it ever again. And I do see that a lot. And we have to remind ourselves that this is a marathon and not a sprint. The first information that you learn of anything is probably always going to be the quickest information, the most exciting, because there's so much you don't know. And the more that you kind of go into the weeds of these things, you start getting less of a return, diminishing marginal return, but every 10% gets a little harder. That's why there's an associate's degree, there's a bachelor's degree, there's a master's degree, there's a PhD, postdoctorate, right? So like each one of these gets a little bit more niche. That master's is an extra 10%. Mm-hmm. That doctorate is an extra 10%. Like, what are you getting out of that? Sure, you expand your knowledge a lot more. And actually the funniest part is I forgot what this is called, but the more you know of something, it's actually kind of like the less that you know, because you know so much that there could be different caveats to so many different things that you're actually less decisive on what is what, which is crazy to me.
Well, it's funny because a living example is this podcast where a lot of times we'll say, I mean, it depends.
Right.
Do this, but it depends.
Yep.
Like, what are your goals? You can try this, but it depends.
Yeah. And it's a lot of fun living in that gray area, but like that gray area could be explored forever because there's not really a set answer on almost anything in life. Mm-hmm. Even though that might not seem like that, but really we're just doing our best with the knowledge that we're given at the time, but that could all change. So there's a lot of gray area. The gray area can be that diminishing marginal return as well. So you might not get back from it as well. I'm getting off the tracks though, but going to these areas really fast and sprinting towards this will actually lead you to burnout because you're just trying to take in so much at a time, trying to do so much at one time when really it should be spread out over periods of time. Enjoy the process all the way through. Either time that if you choose to sprint, enjoy the process, but just know at the end you might get a serious case of burnout. So yeah.
I'm going to play a little bit of a devil's advocate real quick. Mm-hmm. So if you are in the season of rapid growth, meaning that you are able to dedicate yourself to a specific task, and that is part of that aligns with the goals and what you want to do, and you feel rewarded just by doing the task, not necessarily the results you get afterwards. If you feel rewarded doing the thing, then go quick, learn as fast as you can. It's when you're learning, it's when it goes in tandem with other things in life, right? Where I need to go fast. I need results now. Well, if you're results focused, it can make it harder to get joy out of doing it again and again and again, because most things take a long time to see results. But also, and if we're all artists here, we know how fast we learned songs when we first started playing guitar or drums or bass. You know, you learn the basics and you can put it together, and then it's really the fine details that take a long time to master.
Yeah.
So we know that process. It's when you have a lot on your plate, when you're not able to put in as much time as you need to, but you still expect it of yourself, that going fast can be an issue when you have 10 things on your plate and you want to go fast on all of them.
Yes. Yep.
So,
absolutely.
But if you only have one thing on your plate, go as fast as you can.
Yeah, by all means, put all your time into it.
So that's the caveat. Once again, you were talking about the more you know you don't know. It's like, it depends on what you're doing.
Right. And like, just know that when you put more time into this, you're also sacrificing opportunity cost elsewhere. But if you don't have anything else to do, or like, I mean, we all have stuff to do, right? But if within your career, I guess as the viewpoint, if you don't have anything else to work on as much, then like you're not really sacrificing as much opportunity cost, because like I said, like this is their more fruitful option at the time, right? And that's kind of like what you're saying.
Everything that we're saying is potential things that could help, potential reasons why you're feeling burnt out, potential things that can help you get out of it, what works for us, what we've seen work for others. Nothing we're saying works for everyone. It's to rip off of another podcast. It's an advice buffet. Take what you need, leave the rest. So when you listen through this, not all of it's going to work for you. Everything we've said so far, not all of it applies to you. Not all of it's going to help you. Some of it will, some of it won't. So try, see what applies to you, take what can help, and leave the rest. Because nobody has the answers for every situation.
Right.
And we're not trying to tell you we have the answers. Like, I'm not going to say you are going to have your burnout completely solved by the time you're done with this. That's not what we're doing here. This is how we do it. These are some things that we have that work. Try them, think about it, see what works for you, apply it to what you can, and just be aware that it happens. It's going to keep happening. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's normal to be burnt out, but there are things you can do to arm yourself to be better prepared for it and better handle it. Is there anything else you want to kind of cover that you see that can lead to burnout, or do you kind of want to jump into some ways to get past it?
I do want to add at least one more thing. I mean, we could probably riff all day off of this, because there are just so many things that can play into it. But another one that I see a lot is just comparing yourself to other people, whether it's a larger artist, whether it's your peers, whether it's someone maybe not as far as you are.
That's a big one.
Yeah. If you're comparing yourself, you typically lose perspective a lot of the time. It's important to always remember that each story and each come up and each career is not a 1-to-1 ratio. Everything is different. Everything leading up to that career has been different for that person. Even how they're birthed might be different. Seriously, it goes that far back. And like, you have to remember that it's all within scope. You have to keep a fresh perspective on these things. And if you don't, this can lead to a period of feeling like you're stagnant or you're not doing enough. And then this can spill over into burnout, because then you might kick it like into high gear. Oh, I'm not doing this. You take all your posts and all your content that you have and you extinguish the bank in 3 days. And you're like, I'm doing this. And all of a sudden at the end of those 3 days, you have no extra followers, or you have no extra engagement. You have no extra sales. And you're like, oh, well, now I need to go make more content. So then you start back building content, you're working, and then you're like, okay, I have this content and I don't feel creative anymore. And now I don't want to post, and now I don't want to do this. It's seriously, it unravels that fast. So you have to maintain a fresh perspective and not compare yourself. And comparing yourself can also lead to this thing called imposter syndrome. We won't go majorly into imposter syndrome today.
It's a big one though.
But it is a big one. And imposter syndrome can ruin your career, and it can ruin your personal life, and just really wreak havoc everywhere. And it's really hard to get out of that.
What is imposter syndrome? Can you do a quick summary?
Imposter syndrome is basically feeling like you're not good enough to do a certain thing that you're doing. So let's take us, for example, as audio engineers. It's us feeling like we're not audio engineers and we're not validated in the field because we don't have this, or we don't do that, or we haven't done this, or whatever the case may be, fill in the blanks. But that makes us second guess ourselves on what we're doing. And that is probably one of the worst feelings in the entire world. And that will definitely cause emotional burnout and then leads to burnout elsewhere.
Another side of imposter syndrome is the thought of, I'm undeserving of the things that I am getting because I'm not at the level that I need to be in order to learn, to receive these. So like, oh, my music's really not that great. I don't deserve all these fans. Well, they're the ones that give you the value you put in the time you do deserve. it. If people are interested in you genuinely, then you're worth it.
Yes.
So that's the other aspect of imposter syndrome, is not feeling like you are worthy of the things that you get. And that's a big rabbit hole, and that kind of negativity and that mindset also leads to burnout.
Yeah. And I believe we'll have an episode about imposter syndrome in the future,
I
right?
feel like we have to.
Yeah. It's such a big one for creatives. It's huge.
Oh my God. I've had it. You've had it.
Yep.
It's big one for creatives.
Yep.
You've talked about having to keep a fresh perspective and a clear view on what's going on.
Yes.
That sounds really hard.
It is really difficult.
How do you recommend doing it?
So you have to have people that you trust around you, and people that know you really damn well, or don't really know you at all. There's like a weird like extremity right there, right? So like somebody could come in and like tomorrow and be like, you're doing this wrong. Try this. And then it's like, boom, problem solved, like totally unbiased, right? But then there are people that are like, dude, I've noticed you've changed recently, or I noticed this has been different. Like, is everything okay? And then that's kind of a wake up call, right? So you have kind of like both of the two extremes right there. But you really have to have a friend, a mentor, a peer, just around you to kind of help keep you grounded and to talk through these things together. Like I have Sean has me, I have my fiance, whatever the case may be. But like I said, you have to have someone that you trust around you.
And these expectations have to be communicated.
Yes.
Because some people, especially if they're really close to you, can feel bad pointing out your flaws. So if the expectation is, hey, and it's communicated that I really want you to point out when you notice things are amiss and check in on me and make sure things are okay. And it can be hard to ask people who are super invested in you, like a significant other or a family member, to point out your flaws, because they want to protect you, which is why it can be a great idea to form something like a mastermind group or an accountability group, people in similar situations as you that can relate to things you're going through, that meet weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, but just consistently, where you can talk about what's going on, things that may be holding you back, things that may be stressing you, and just get perspectives from other people that is in a space where it's expected that that's kind of the outcome that's going to happen. A mastermind group is just, as I said earlier, it's a group of people that get together on a consistent basis to talk about a specific topic. And most of the time, they're people in a similar field or have a similar goal or have a similar process of what they're doing. So like they're all business owners, or they're all musicians, or they're all singers, or they're all audio engineers, or they're all creatives. Just people who can relate to what you're doing. So if you are in a band and a lot of your stress comes from, the music you make and the band as a whole, find other bands and try to form mastermind groups with members in those bands. So you can say, hey, we're having these band problems. We're having these kinds of issues going on that are really giving us stress. Someone else can say, hey, I've had that problem too. We went through that last year and this is how we fixed it. And they can give you a more personalized solution to the problems you've had because they've been there and they've done that. And in a mastermind group, you really kind of want to be almost the least qualified person there.
Yeah.
Because if you're in a group where people know more than you, it's easier to rise to where they are and to learn from their past experience. It can take a while to form a mastermind group, find people who are as committed as you are, but you want to be in similar situations so that when you do come across problems, you do have burnout from specific reasons, you can go to people who will keep you accountable, who will say, hey, last week you said you're having this problem and we told you to do this. Have you done it? Yes or no? You got to do it. Keep up. We'll message you weekly to make sure you're doing this, you're growing. That kind of accountability, that kind of group can be super beneficial.
Absolutely.
Did I say super enough?
I think, yeah, super cubed.
Super cube.
I think I do have a slight devil's advocate on like the smallest, tiniest little thing, is that sometimes it can be helpful to go seek that outside perspective from a mastermind group too, like in somebody that's in a different area that is doing business, right? Because like sometimes that leads to disruptive innovation, and this is so kind of off the topic and off the rails, but sometimes you need that fresh, like weird, like exotic perspective in your field that can actually remotivate you and like kind of gives you like a little bit of like a cool little kick in the pants, you know, to go out and try, and the kind of reinvigorates you. To like, dude, like the tiniest, smallest devil's advocate right there.
No, I 1000% agree with you. And that's why I almost say make more than one mastermind group. Have one of people that relate to you so you can go through these specific problems, people who relate, but also make a group of people that are more broad so you can learn from things outside of what you're doing. How does the business owner market themselves? Well, maybe I can use those in my music. How does the manager of a clothing store delegate tasks and assign things and set up deadlines to make sure things get done on time? Maybe you can take that from them and apply it to your band to make sure everything's getting done on time. Where do these just in general,
how do you handle scheduling?
Yeah, how do you handle scheduling? Yeah. Where do you go to handle your taxes or learn about more about insurance, or just people who have different experiences or have to solve these problems in different means, give a fresh perspective, and that helps separate you from everybody else.
Absolutely.
And, you know, kind of
and I think
make you more unique.
And I think when you venture into this realm too, so caveat is that you have to know how to use certain aspects correctly in your own business. I think that should be kind of like a given, but like you have to be you have to be able to summarize and synthesize this information specifically to work for you sometimes, and know when to take advice and when to maybe leave something, since this person might not know exactly what you're doing. The advice might not be tailored to you specifically, or they might be not as aware of a certain issue with this piece of advice, but you have to kind of tailor it to yourself. So when you go to do this, there is a little bit more work put in because you kind of have to translate it to work. But just a small devil's advocate or small caveat to whatever.
There's so many layers to it. You're gonna have to experiment and see what works for you, put together a group and see how it helps you. Find the right people who are committed to it. The mastermind I created a couple of years back, at the end of it, we've got about 5 members that are strong and have been doing it for a while, but I've had about 8 members come and go throughout that whole time period too, because they just decided it wasn't for them, or they weren't able to make that consistent of a commitment. So it takes time to find the right people, but when you do, you have a backbone, somebody you can go back to for advice and can help pull you through, and who can relate. So, I was burnt out last year. I was burnt out a month ago. I was burnt out 2 weeks ago. I mean, when Brandon and I started off, I told you that my most recent burnout session, I guess, happened like 2 weeks after Brandon's. And he mentioned that when he was going through his, it was right when we started this podcast, and we had some really good conversations after it about what's going through, what are some possible solutions, how I handled it in the past, things like you can get more time back. And then since then we've talked about things that I've done about, he's helped me be reflective on things that I'm doing, things I can cut back on. And this podcast helps me get my minds out, my thought process too. Because a lot of things that we talk about are things that we've experienced recently that are top of mind for us, because makes us more knowledgeable about them when it's things that we're doing. Since we've both been burnt out recently, we're like, we should probably talk about it.
Yeah, totally. And like, I think it's fair to say that you can go through periods of burnout like multiple times a year, or maybe not at all within a year. It really it's whenever it strikes, like you have to kind of know when to deal with it. And sometimes you know when that's coming up too. So I do want to throw that in there too, when we were talking about our periods of burnout.
Oh yeah. So I think that kind of summarize. I know there's a lot more we could dive into about reasons why you might be seeing burnout, potential ways to solve it for those specific things that might be causing you to feel burnt out. And it can be hard to really identify when you are feeling it, but the more it happens, the better you're going to be at recognizing it, and just be aware that it can and will happen. So if you are feeling super stressed or whatnot, think, is this what I'm feeling? Try to identify it. And if you do identify it, go through the process like we talked about, maybe try some of the tips that we talked about to see how you can get past it. We're just going to kind of run through some final ways that we think about, that we've thought of, that we do that help us get past burnout. A thing that I do is going on inspiration trips. It could be a vacation. It could be an afternoon event. It can be, it could even be watching a show. If a show is what inspires you to do what you do, just putting aside time to do the things that motivate you, to get you back into it
Yeah.
and take time to step away from being in the belly of the beast, I guess.
Take time to live life.
Yeah, to separate. I mean, that's why you brought up at the start of this. That's why vacations exist. Humans can't work a 9 to 5 every day for their whole lives. There needs to be periods of breaks. There needs to be times where you can step away from all of it. And especially with music, because musicians think differently. Music matters so much more to musicians and artists than the average person. When it is so connected, it is hard to separate, because my music is me. It's my soul. It's a representation of everything that I'm doing. It's my story. It can be incredibly hard to step away from that and take that vacation, go on a trip that puts it behind. And that's why it can also be important to identify the core values of your music and what your music is about, so that you don't have to have it be a full representation of you. And it's less likely to be overwhelmed when everything you do is so tied to it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are getting overwhelmed, think about what inspires you, what gets it off your mind. What do you do just for you that helps you recover? Maybe it's a nap. Maybe it's yoga. Maybe it's a vacation. Maybe it's diving into your hobbies. Maybe it's talking to your friends. But whatever it is, take some time to do that. Because if you're always working, you're never working at 100%.
Right. Yep, I totally agree. The next one that I had was more specific to imposter syndrome, but as like a general thing, is just be mindful of like the content that you're consuming on a daily basis. Let's say you watch the news for 3 hours a day. The news is generally not a positive thing to watch, and that can also cause a lot of stresses that really sometimes aren't necessary, to be totally honest. There's a lot of fear mongering going on within some of the things that are written. I'm not a news guy that's like, oh, anti-news, but the writing is definitely, if you take a step back from it, look at some of the writing that is sometimes presented within the news, there's definitely some slight fear stuff, stress stuff kind of induced. And that's normal, because us as humans do face a lot. We do like going to the negative side of things, because it's easier to think about and to kind of like express, and we do feed off of that. That's why drama shows are so big, and that's why TV shows are huge, because it's all based off something, right? So without going too far into that is something I want to say is be mindful of the content that you consume and make sure that it's more fuel than it is just passive, right? And then the next thing is kind of stay away from content that baits you into imposter syndrome. So like, for example, let's say you are taking a song course, and the way that it's marketed is that this is why your song sucks. Sometimes people will respond well to that. I personally don't. I don't like doing that, because it doesn't make me feel good.
I personally do.
Yeah. See, and like
that's why it's a device buffet.
Exactly. And I think if you're that type of person that does not respond well to that type of content will actually make you think like you need to buy that course. And that's what it's for, is to bait you into buying it. But it also makes you feel like shit at the same time.
It makes you feel like your music sucks.
Yep.
Because it's marketing as your music sucks.
Exactly. And you should be able to maintain a fresh perspective of your music with your mentors, with your peers, and know that either your music needs work, or know that it's on the right trajectory too, because like nothing's ever perfect, right? We're always working on something. But that's another thing that kind of that I wanted to get out before we end.
No, that's fair. And as I said, you're never gonna know all the answers. We don't know all the answers. There's things that work, things that don't, and things that may work before might not work the second time as effectively or whatnot, depending on what is causing the burnout. But being prepared, knowing some things that you can do, just kind of helps with confidence of, I can get through it. This isn't as big of a deal as it may have thought. I take ownership on these things that I'm doing and these emotions that I'm feeling and the things that I need to get done. It does, at the end of the day, fall on me, fall on you. And we've gotten through it before, can get through it again. Confidence is in confidence and faith in things will get better. I'll get past this. I just need to keep doing what I believe in and keep following the goals, and I will achieve the success that I eventually, or whatever I deem as success, having faith in that is also a great motivator, just kind of keep on pushing forward. As I've mentioned, I've been working 70, 80 hours a week for the past 3 months, maybe longer. And it's a lot. And I'm not saying do this. Honestly, don't. But I have faith that I have a lot on my plate. And I put it all on my plate, even knowing I was going to get burnt out and overwhelmed, because I have in the past. But I have faith that doing this now, building it up now, helps me deal with it better, helps me handle it better, and puts me in a position where in the future I won't have to do it because I've done it now. And I've learned and put systems in place that help me, that I can use later on in the future to help get me back my time, get me back my motivation, my sanity, I guess, my energy. And it's been a journey. I mean, I've recently joined a gym that I got a personal trainer to help keep me accountable. And I go 3 to 4 times a week, not because I necessarily super care about appearances, but I know that my happiest times have been when I've exercised, when I've ran consistently, and when I've been the most physically active. So if I can instill in myself a habit of staying active, it helps kind of stave off in burnout, because I'm doing things that I know have helped me feel more better and productive in the past. It's putting in habits that help me be better moving forward. So, and doing that helps me, as I said, helps me with my confidence. I know I can deal with it because I am consistently adding things that help in the future. Not going to say burnout's not going to happen. It will, it has, it did, it is, but it's better than it was before. And it's going to get better than it was before. But if it's debilitating now, that's okay.
Right.
You will get through it because that's what life is.
Yep.
And when you do, and you reflect on it, and you learn things that, hey, this is why I feel good. This is why I do it before. This is what I can remove. This is what I keep. All of that, you'll be more prepared. You'll be more confident, and you'll be someone who can identify when you are feeling burnout and address it so you can keep going through the tough times and keep making your music and get it out there and make a living doing the things that you love. Not the things that you don't love, the things that you love, and put everything else aside. So that's my piece.
Yeah. I think you said it the best. I mean, you have to go through it to get experience in it and to be able to prevent it and hopefully deal with it in certain ways in the future, because it's inevitable, right? You can't just sit on the sidelines the entire time. Sometimes you do have to push yourself through these things, and sometimes you do have to take more and put it on your plate. So that way later, these things don't feel as monumental. It just is what it is.
Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this episode. A little bit different tonally wise, a little bit different topic wise than our previous episodes. I figured it's the 10th one. Let's try something new. Let's shake it up a little bit, talk about more of the mental side of it. And it can be a very heavy thing to do. So hopefully this helped you. Let us know if it did. Let us know what you do to kind of help with your burnout. And please follow, share, leave us a review on this podcast, wherever you're listening to it. If you're watching the video podcast on YouTube, subscribe, give us, your feedback, and let us know if you have any ideas and things you'd like us to talk about in the future. Anything you're struggling with, you can contact us with your ideas at podcast@musicmakerscookbook.com. And yeah.
Just remember, when you're feeling burnt out, just not to burn your food.
When you're getting burnt out, turn down the gas.
Yeah. Or electric stove.
Or electric.
If that's what you have. That's what I have, unfortunately.
I have electric too.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Yeah. So turn down the electric stove a little bit.
From our kitchen to yours, time to get cooking. Bon appetit.
Bon appetit.
Bone apple teeth.